okay?
Yeah.
Everyone's everybody's familiar with the site. Just to get your bearings, obviously Fairfield Park, the Premier Inn, and Wheatfield Way. The one way is coming around past the bus stop at the corner, the northwest corner. Now, everything that the borough talks about is just the Kingfisher site. And for the life of me, I have no idea why the rest of the vacant site is not being considered at this same time. Normally you start with the master plan and then you focus on one key part of that. You never do it in this way. And this sort of silo approach to the design, I can only think is a reaction to the silo funding or the departmental way things are run. I don't know what it is. But the result is, from an architectural point of view or an urban point of view, is a loss of opportunity, both from an urban point of view, from a social point of view, from an economic point of view. This was the latest situation. There's a lot of information on here. The key thing is that it was raised last night is miraculously the building will be 48% less cost, i.e. half the price, but it's only being reduced by a quarter. How you do that is beyond me, absolutely beyond me. We're now going to have timber structure rather than concrete, so you're putting up costs there, I would think. The only place I can see that you can reduce the cost is in the facade, which would be a shame, but in essence you're creating a big shed, I think. This is expensive, not just because it's a fence, but the loading, so it impacts the structure. Structure's a third of the cost of the whole thing. You may say 50% of that, so there's 15. There's still another 35%. I don't know how they're doing. I really don't. A little bit of background about me. My wife and I were in Asia for a long time, about 25 years. Prior to that, I was in London working for very large commercial developers. So I do have some idea of how London works. But I am a bit rusty, although I have been with the KSOC and one of the Conservation Area Action Committees for the last 3 years, so I've been rapidly brought back up to speed. But it's interesting to know how the UK works very, very differently from Asia, where I've been for the last 24 years. So in Asia, I was doing all sorts of commercial developments, very large projects across China, India, and in Singapore. It says 6 years, 6 years in Hong Kong and then 18 years in Singapore and India. So as well as very large commercial projects, a lot of retail. And retail is all about circulation, and I'm just flabbergasted that a valuable commercial site in the middle of town doesn't look at the commercial at the onset, because that's what drives income. I put this up, it's a bit of a brute. Don't look at the 50-story towers that are appearing on the skyline. It's this ugly sort of coffin-shaped thing, which I want to talk about. And I worked on this for 2 years with Arps, one of the world's foremost engineers. And I show this because this was a train depot at the end of one of the lines in Hong Kong, upon which a town for 50,000 people would be built. So our remit was preparing this depot, not just for trains, but also for the services and fire requirements for the buildings above. The point being, I think, if you are to think laterally about not just what it is you're designing for, but what may become after that, perhaps there's something that we can apply to the Kingfisher. This is what I'm working on at the moment. This is back in India. To give you an idea of the scale of this, that's the Royal Exchange Tower, which we can see from our back garden. So this is a big boy, very big boy. But that's not to say I'm not sensitive to working in a conservation area. So this is our own home in the Knights Park Conservation Area, which we're very proud of. So the front of the house is reconstructed and is very in keeping with the rest of the street. And around the back, where we could, we tried to be modern, using reference materials and timber in the annex. Okay, turning to the site. So the initial replacement proposals, as Tony just outlined, for me, it's just a big box. I was horrified by this. No sensitivity to its site, to its beautiful neighbouring listed building by Andrew. Andrew Carnegie comes from the town I grew up in, so I'm very sensitive to his work. I was just horrified. And I'm also horrified with what becomes of this and what becomes of that? Because this just blocks everything. It just sits like a big elephant in the middle of the space and says, I'm here. Especially in the context, I'm horrified, especially in the context of what I've seen's gone on. So normally I'm on this side of the table, working for these sort of people. I've actually worked with British Land before. So I know what these people do, and profit drives everything. How much can we build on this site? That's the name of the game. So whilst they're busy doing that, we're busy fighting over a swimming pool and losing the opportunity to actually realise the true commercial value of the site and perhaps get a swimming pool for free. That's what this is saying. In the new local plan, is that right, Lydia? Local plan, they've identified this part of the site as having 78 homes and 3,100 square metres of retail and office. You compare that to the 3 projects I've just mentioned, similar size sites, 385 flats and a huge commercial development. 300 flats on Eden Royal Exchange. And even in the new Eden campus, which is lauded as Unilever's new headquarter office building, they're still managing to get in 115 flats. And yet our council can only get 78. Now I jump up about this because I'm seeing my clients extract as much value out of their asset. Why are we throwing away all of this value out of ours? We pay the rates for this site. This is a huge asset. Why are we not maximising its value? So that's just a refresher of where we are. So how would we achieve this? And how would we pay for it? Because they say this is £40 million. No one's explaining how they're going to pay for it. I have a little idea how they think they're going to do it coming up. The other thing I was frankly dismayed at was the architecture. I don't like dissing other architects, but this is the one this is the Hackney Britannia Leisure Centre. And this is the Kingfisher, or maybe it's the other way around, I can't remember which it is. But the stone base and the perforated metal top, it's exactly the same. Now, this is an architect's dream because you can reuse all of your standard details. Make it a different colour and away you go. Now, what's even better is if you do this once, in fact you do it once, you do it twice, then the same client comes back again and said, will you do it again? Absolutely. £400,000 please. So going on to the site, I think you all know the site very well. This is this big box sitting in the middle of this site of opportunity. There's the library, obviously we've talked about, there's the park, and there's the cattle market site. And as I said, this is how I see this architecturally. This big box sitting in the middle, meaning that the other 2 parts, or 3 parts, the library, the park, and whatever happens here, they don't communicate. They never know that the other exists. For me, that is poor urban planning and a real loss of commercial opportunity. Commercial opportunities is all about flow, car flow, people flow. That's what drives commercial opportunity. So I look at that and I just think there's a real issue and a real loss of opportunity there. And this is actually confirmed. When you look at the design access statement in the current proposal, you can see the hotspots. Everything happens in this corner. The rest of the site, frankly, is dead. It's just dead. Now, yes, there's a nice children's park, and yes, it's an extension of greenery. We all like greenery, but commercially, it's dead. I was going on about circulation, and this little red dot from an architectural point of view is very important because it drives traffic. Now if you think about, rather than being a swimming pool, if you look at the bentals, which we all know, if you notice at the front, lots and lots of traffic, foot traffic, lots of people. The back, nothing. It's a service entrance. That's the back of our library. That's the back of our swimming pool. This is how it will be. Because the developers of this and the architect BDP, very good architects, they know exactly what they're doing. You have a front door, People go into bentals, that generates value. This is, this is commercial 101. It's basic stuff. Here, this is where I think the Lib Dems are going with this. The scale of the development that they describe in the new plan, 78 units and 3,100 square meters, is essentially this. That's it. So it's not commensurate scale with the Premier Inn opposite. Certainly not the same scale as Royal Exchange, Eden Campus and Eden Walk. If I owned this site, I certainly would be fighting for it. And I do own this site, as you all do. And when you stack the values of these parts up, I can go into this detail later, I came to a gross development value of 115. A broad rule of thumb when you value a site is a third. A third of 115 or 120, 40 million. That's the budget for the Kingfisher. So the value of that site and the value of the project, or the Kingfisher, is roughly the same. I don't know whether that's where it's coming from, but that was where I ended up in this simple approach. Okay, how would I be doing this with a commercial developer? If I couldn't change the component parts, first thing I would be fighting to do is to move the pool back, because I know there's going to be an army of ants walking backwards and forwards across here every day. That creates value for me here. That pushes up the value of that for everybody. That would be the first thing I do. And why shouldn't the kids' play park be here? It could be an arena, it can be much more than just a kids' park. It's overlooked, it's lit, as opposed to not overlooked and dark. It's safer, it's more valuable. What's not to like? It connects the Fairfield to the library, it gives the library some room to breathe. For me, straight away at a stroke, it's a much more interesting scheme. Another thing you could do is just get rid of the pool. I know there's some big empty holes down in Surbiton. Why not have a massive Lido? Have outdoor pools, indoor pools. Why not? Seriously, why not? Make life a lot easier for everybody. Or you could fill in the gala bingo. So this is a real pool.
With a casino.
This is a real pool, and it fits. There's a swimming pool sitting in the current hall, and there's the basketball hall on top. There's enough room around the outside for ancillary space and supports. They spent £12 million on this so far, buy it off them for 12, fit it out for 20, and sell the site and realise the maximum value for the site. Okay, going back to here. And we've got an answer for the temporary pool as well. When I was studying on what to do, I was using lots of Asian references about how you build, you build a commercial development around a public asset. And I looked and looked and looked in the UK for something, and I came across this, and this is just completed. Now it's in Westminster, which was a Conservative borough, and now it's a Labour borough, so the Lib Dems ain't going to like this, but it's a perfect model of what we're talking about. £47 million contract value, a full sports complex, paid for by 15 townhouses and 56 flats. It's a much, much smaller site. Much, much smaller. So you can see here, if you can, there's the pool and there's the gymnasium. That's ground floor. When you go up to the middle floors, there's the void for the pool. There's the sports hall. And then on top of all of this, you've got apartments. And I think the apartments go up 3 floors on top. So this is not pie in the sky stuff. This has been done in boroughs in London. Okay, so how do we do this? What would I do? That's the new reduced scheme, possibly. The sports hall on top of the pool hall. I would flatten it out, encroach a little bit on the kids' play area, and make a flat deck. That reduces your cost straight away, really, unless you want to build something on top. What I'm interested in, though, is the opportunity to get across this dual carriageway with a green link. and expand the green. Essentially, the whole site is now green, built on top of the sports hall, just the same way as we saw in Westminster. There is the residential development, which is broadly the same as the council are talking about. I've just made it slightly bigger. And then I start to bruise it up. Now, if I was working on the other side of the table, this is where we would start. Actually, we might even go higher, because we'd expect to be fought back to this point. That is 57 metres, which is the same height as Eden Walk, Eden Campus, and Royal Exchange. That, to me, is a given. Because if Kingston said no, we would go straight to appeal. In fact, we might go straight to appeal at the same time as we approach Kingston. Now, these are only sketches, but they're based on real plans. And you can see that they're arranged around the big, the long span space where the expense is in building structure. So you don't build on top of it, just the same as the one in Westminster. So this is real. So we've gone to the height of Royal Exchange here, and just like Royal Exchange, step down towards the lower buildings. And then, of course, we screen it all. So I think straight away that's better than the current scheme with the big box sitting here. Because from down here, you won't be really aware of the scale of this. Doing this exercise, I got to a gross development value of 300 million. This was based on 384 units at £700 a square foot net space. £700 a square foot is what the Eden Walk and Royal Exchange went for. This is priced here. Again, just looking at the local real estate, this is based upon pricing that it costs you to buy a commercial space in Kingston. The leisure complex we know is around 50. So I believe these are not a million miles away. If the gross development value here is 300, broad rule of thumb, a third. So we're sitting on a site worth 100 million, and yet we're fighting and squabbling over 40. It's beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me. And there's a little bit more detail. I can come back to this afterwards if you want to talk about it. So in essence, I hope I've shown that there is a way to deliver this for free. And compared to where I think the council is going, the site value is only worth 40 because that's all they're going to generate from here, and that's why they've got to stay with 40. If you were to do it commercially and properly, the site is worth 100 million. That's 60 million pounds into our pockets. Now, I don't want another 16-storey building. I don't. But if I was on the other side of the table, I'd be fighting for it.
Is there a car park there? Sorry? Is there a car park?
There could be a car park underneath. In fact, underneath any of these buildings, absolutely, there could.
I'm just curious about school buses and stuff as well.
No, that came up yesterday. So no, absolutely. And Maria and I went up to site. I know there's a big hole dug under there. I think it would be a great idea to allow for that. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the other thing you can be doing is what's called top-down construction. You can build a concrete table, and you can build the development above whilst you're building the pool and digging a hole underneath. There's all sorts of things you could be doing. Council's latest proposal, commercial approach. The last thing that came up last night was a temporary pool, and one of the councillors said, or somebody from the audience said that one had been built in Andover. He reckoned it's going to cost about 1.82 million pounds. Well, if we've got 100 million pound in the bank, let's just go and buy one. Now, the last thing to say, I'm not God's answer to architecture. There's a lot of great talent out there. With £400,000, you could get a lot of architects working their butt off to take a brief that we're all comfortable with, maybe not 380 apartments, maybe it's less, but coming up with some great ideas for the whole site and really push this out and actually create some real value from this site, which I think we should be. We want to conserve water and we care about the environment. This is caring about the environment. Maximise your resources. That's it.